What if Lionel Messi wins the 2026 World Cup? At 38 years old. Because if that happens, football history doesn't just change. It will resets. A few years ago, the story felt complete. Messi had done the impossible. The missing piece was finally filled. Argentina had lifted the World Cup in 2022. And for many people around the world, that was supposed to be the ending. The perfect ending. The final chapter of a career that had already gone beyond anything football had ever seen. Something strange is happening. Messi is back. Not as a memory. Not as a legend watching from the sidelines. But as the captain of Argentina's 2026 World Cup squad. Still expected to lead. Still expected to decide games. At an age where most players are long retired. And here's where the question becomes uncomfortable. Because 2022 didn't just end with celebration. It ended with closure. A trophy lifted in Qatar. A final against France that felt like a movie. A performance that people still replay as perfection. 2 goals in the final. A penalty shootout. A moment of football immortality. That was supposed to be it. But it wasn't. Because now, in 2026, Messi is not chasing completion anymore. He is chasing continuation. And not everyone believes it's possible. Because at 38 years old, football doesn't wait for sentiment. It moves faster than memory. You lose pace. You lose recovery. You lose time. Even if you are Lionel Messi. But Argentina still named him. The center of everything. And that raises the most important question in modern football. Is Messi still the system, or just a symbol now? Because around him, the game has changed. New stars are rising. New teams are stronger. And even within Argentina, the squad is evolving. Younger players are faster, more physical, more aggressive. Yet somehow, when the pressure arrives, the ball still finds him. And that is where this story begins. Not with celebration, but with a question that the entire world is now asking. Can Lionel Messi, at 38 years old, win one last World Cup, and end football history on his own terms? But to understand that answer, we have to go back. Back to the moment where many believed the story was already finished. The moment when Messi finally lifted the trophy that defined everything, and became something even greater than a player. For many football fans, the 2022 World Cup didn't feel like a tournament. It felt like a final chapter. A story that had been building for almost 2 decades, finally reaching its ending. And at the center of it was Lionel Messi. Because before that moment there was always something missing. The club trophies were there. The records were there. The individual awards were there. But the World Cup? That was the gap. The one question people used to challenge his greatness. Then 2022 happened. And everything changed. Argentina's journey didn't start smoothly. In fact, it started with shock. A loss in their opening match that shook the entire football world. Suddenly, the dream didn't feel guaranteed anymore. It felt real. And that is where Messi's leadership became different. Not louder. Not emotional speeches. Not dramatic reactions. But control. He started deciding moments. He started calming games. He started carrying responsibility in silence. Every match after that felt like survival. And slowly, Argentina began to grow into the tournament. Messi scored when it mattered. He assisted when it mattered. And in knockout football, he became unavoidable. Then came the final. Argentina versus France. A match that didn't feel real even while it was happening. When he finally lifted the trophy, it wasn't just celebration. It felt like closure. Like the last missing piece had been placed into a story that had lasted over 20 years. And that's why so many people believed it was over. Because how do you follow that? How do you improve that ending? How do you come back after reaching the perfect finish? Even Messi himself hinted at the emotional weight of it. The feeling that maybe, the final moment, the final chapter. But football doesn't always respect endings. Because while the world was ready to close the book, something unexpected happened behind the scenes. Something very few people paid attention to at first. Messi didn't disappear. He didn't retire from the international stage. He didn't step away completely. He stayed connected. He stayed involved. He stayed available. And slowly, without loud announcements, the idea began to form again. Not from fans, not from media, but from within Argentina's football system. A question no one expected after a perfect ending. What if he is still needed? And that question is what leads us into 2026, where the story is no longer about what Messi achieved, but what he might still be capable of. At 38 years old, with the world watching again, and time no longer on his side. Football, coming back is never just about ability. It's about time. And time at the highest level never stops moving in your favor. As the 2026 World Cup approaches, Lionel Messi is no longer entering as the young magician the world once tried to contain. He is entering as something else entirely. A champion, a captain, and a symbol Argentina refuses to let go of. At 38 years old, his role is no longer built around constant movement or endless minutes. It is built around moments. Moments that can change matches without warning. Moments that don't need speed, but vision. But behind the scenes, there is reality. The body doesn't recover like it used to. Minor muscle fatigue appears more often. And the demands of international football feel heavier than before. This is why Argentina have changed how they use him. Not to reduce his importance, but to preserve it. A version of Messi designed not for every minute, but for the decisive ones. And that change tells its own story. Because for the first time in his career, Messi is being managed like a legacy, not just a player. But here is where the tension begins. Because Argentina are not coming into this World Cup as outsiders. They are coming in as champions. Defending everything they built in 2022. And defending a title is always harder than winning it. The expectation is no longer hope. It is demand. Fans don't ask if Argentina can compete. They ask if they can repeat history. And everything still revolves around one name. Even in a squad filled with world-class attackers, even with younger stars rising, the system still bends toward him. Because when pressure arrives, Argentina still look for the same solution. Give it to Messi. But that creates a dangerous question. One that nobody inside the team can fully ignore. What happens if Messi is no longer able to decide games the same way? Because football has already seen versions of this story before. Great players. Final tournaments. High expectations. But not all endings are written the same way. There is no more future tournament. And somewhere in the middle of all this pressure, a younger generation is waiting. Players like Kylian Mbappe. Players like Yamal. Players who represent what comes after Messi. And that is what makes this World Cup different. Because this time, Messi is not just fighting opponents. He is fighting time itself. And time does not lose. It only waits to be respected. So as Argentina prepare for kickoff, the world is not asking what Messi has done. They are asking what he can still do. At 38. One last time. And the answer to that question will decide whether 2026 becomes a final goodbye or another impossible chapter in football history. When the World Cup finally begins, everything that came before it stops mattering. Past tournaments, past trophies, past emotions. Because now it is only about one thing. The present. For Argentina, the pressure is immediate. They are not just participating. They are defending champions. And every opponent they face is not just trying to win. They are trying to remove them from history. And at the center of it all is Lionel Messi, captain of Argentina, leader of a generation, and now the most watched player on the planet. At 38 years old, the opening match arrives in Kansas City, Argentina versus Algeria. And the atmosphere feels heavier than normal. Not because of fear, but because of expectation. Every touch Messi takes is followed differently now. Not with surprise, but with analysis. Is he still the same? Can he still decide games? Is this finally the tournament where time catches up? But early in the match, something familiar happens. Even without constant movement, even without dominating every second, Messi still finds space where there should be none. A moment that shifts the rhythm of the game. And Argentina respond. Because this is what has always defined them. When pressure rises, they don't panic. They look for him. But football at this level is never simple. Because every team now knows the same truth. If you stop Messi, you stop Argentina. So opponents prepare differently. They press earlier. They close space faster. They force decisions under pressure. And that is where the real battle begins. Not between teams, but between systems. Experience versus youth. Control versus intensity. Legacy versus ambition. And on the other side of the tournament, the new generation is waiting. France with Kylian Mbappe. Spain with Lamine Yamal. Other nations built on speed, energy, and evolution. And slowly, a narrative builds across the world. This is not just another World Cup. This is a transition point in football history. Because every match Messi plays now carries a question in the background. Is this the last time we see this version of him on this stage? But Argentina are not thinking about endings. They are thinking about survival. And then, if possible, something greater. As the tournament continues, Messi's role becomes even more defined. Not constant dominance, but decisive impact. Not every minute control. And that is where the truth of this World Cup lies. Because at 38 years old, Messi is no longer fighting for statistics. He is fighting for moments that will be remembered forever. And if Argentina go deep, if they reach the final stages again, then the world will be forced to ask a question it thought it already answered in 2022. Was that really the end, or just another chapter? Because now, there are only two possible outcomes. Either Messi completes the greatest ending in football history, winning the World Cup again at 38, and turning Argentina into a back-to-back world champion dynasty. The story finally ends here. Not with failure, but with time. Football will never see a story like this again. Because legends are not only defined by what they win, they are defined by how long they make the world believe it is still possible. And Lionel Messi has already done that more than once. Final line. So the question is no longer just, can Messi win one last World Cup at age 38? The real question is, will football ever allow a story like this again?